course, is not much of a ringing endorsement, and we all know which one Trump falls under. And let's remember who else has been given this title in years past in the same category: Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Ayatollah Khomeini, and Vladimir Putin. In fact, Stalin won the distinction twice, just like Trump. Regardless of the company he keeps, we know how important these magazine covers are to Trump. Just look at this tour he gave the Washington Post in 2015 of his Trump Tower office, with a wall adorned with his various cover appearances.
Oh, joyless Mead, joyless Reed. As you can see, she is so big mad, but unfortunately her seething hate has blinded her to the fact that so many of her idols have also been on the cover of Time, right? Obama, Greta. Oh, and don't forget that she herself was the Time Magazine Person of the Year, as were all of you. The year was 2006, and Time Magazine declared 3 letters, Y-O-U, you, as the Person of the Year. It was a rather futile attempt at trying to be clever, of course, but they made all of us Person of the Year in 2006. So Joyless Reed isn't just insulting us in her latest unhinged rant. She ironically and unknowingly implicated herself. But that's just par for the course in the mindless drivel that passes as legitimate news commentary on the dying, fledgling network of MSNBC. Greetings, everyone. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, no longer here to help you stay sane in these insane times, because you, the patriots of this nation, on November the 5th, rose up in defiance of tyranny, and you took our country back. And that is why I am forever grateful to each and every one of you. If you're brand new to this channel, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You will not want to miss a single video of our analyzing and celebrating the rise of a new conservative civilizationalist age all over the world that you are helping to bring about. As always, we've got a jam-packed show for you guys today. We are live on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, you name it. Just a quick reminder, if you want to ask me your questions, you will quickly find out that our super chats have been disabled. They've been suspended. That is because YouTube has completely demonetized this channel. Hopefully that will be resolved as the result of the rise of the golden age. But until then, just click on that link below or go to fight.turleytalks.com/join. Join any one of our levels of support. You have instant access to our very own virtual platform, our censorship-free virtual platform, where you can ask me all of your questions. I will be happy to answer them on this live stream. So just click on that link below or go to fight.turleytalks.com/join and join any level of support that you like. And you can ask me all your questions, and I will answer them in due course on this live stream. USA Today. Yes, believe it or not, USA Today, a staple in the dying legacy media, has just come out with a piece describing the one and done Biden presidency as the single greatest political disaster in the history of our nation. But Biden, in many ways, Biden made Jimmy Carter's 4-year failure look stellar by comparison. Carter got to live to see the one single doof that could outdo his colossal catastrophe of an administration. Biden's administration, USA Today admits, has been comprised of one disastrous decision after another, from his inexcusable handling of the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, to his inability to deter aggression from Russia and Hamas, to his reckless spending policies that fueled inflation and joblessness, to his willful neglect and dereliction of law enforcement duties at the southern border, all, of course, climaxing in his repeated lying and deception when it came to pardoning his own son, Hunter, for federal crimes. All of it together comprises what USA Today calls a 4-year record of immoral and irresponsible leadership that was, of course, completely repudiated by Trump's landslide win on November 5th. The only thing I think I would disagree with in this USA Today article, the only thing is that this is emphatically not leadership. We have not seen 4 years of leadership. Biden doesn't have a leadership bone in his body. This was not leadership. This was negligence. This was 4 years of a dereliction of duty. Now, of course, the $10,000 question, well, given Biden-induced inflation, the $35,000 question is, why? Why on earth would Biden do this? Is it incompetence? Is it intentional? And as I'm sure you just guessed, the answer is yes. It's both. Let's start with the intentional side of things. I'm sure many of you have heard or are familiar with something called the Cloward-Piven strategy. Now, if not, you want to do some reading up on this because it is absolutely fascinating. It's going to blow your mind. It goes back to this article published back in 1966 in the ultra-left publication known as The Nation. They're still around. They're basically a Marxist publication. And the article was entitled The Weight of the Poor, a Strategy to End Poverty. Okay, so the end is justifying the means, as it were. If you just that's the big picture of this article. Keep in mind that the same legacy media, this is just as an aside, keep in mind that the same legacy media that was obsessed over Project 2025, which, by the way, is about to be implemented, right? Now that the election is over, okay, we can all admit it now. Project 2025 is going to be absolutely lit. Trump was all in, and he's actually appointing people who are the architects of Project 2025 to his cabinet. So, yeah, you were right. But anyway, same legacy media that was obsessed over Project 2025 could not give a rip. They couldn't give a moment's notice of this openly published Cloward-Piven strategy. And we'll find out precisely because they're fellow participants in it. The 1966 article was written by 2 professors from Columbia University. Now, that's important. Columbia University was the queen bee's nest for cultural Marxism in our nation. If you don't know, during World War II, members of the cultural Marxist school known as the Frankfurt School left Europe and settled in America, in American academia, and their home base was Columbia University. So 2 decades later, we've got 2 Columbia professors advocating for our federal leaders to force a crisis in the welfare system in order to compel the federal government to enact a new program for direct income distribution. And so the strategy boiled down to intentionally provoking a series of political crises, largely caused by straining the capacity of local governments to be able to effectively govern. So you think precisely like we're seeing in New York with Mayor Eric Adams and the illegal immigration crisis, or in San Francisco with their homeless and crime crisis, or with the Soros-funded soft on crime DAs and the violent crime crisis that's been unleashed in our nation's cities. This article advocates that federal leaders need to deliberately overwhelm the social system with a series of governing crises, which they believe would ultimately compel national Democrat leaders to respond with a federal solution, such as a guaranteed annual income that would override local conflicts and provide a permanent resolution to poverty. Keep in mind, this was authored while Lyndon Baines Johnson was president. I don't know if they foresaw a Democrat supermajority for the foreseeable future, but it's interesting, published in 1966. Now, what's key here is that they explicitly state in the article that the news media needs to play an indispensable role in the information warfare needed to indoctrinate the public to support this cultural Marxist vision. So that's what's called the Cloward-Piven strategy. It's basically strategic chaos in order to bring about a communist revolution. Chaos breeds cultural Marxism. Now, it's obviously not Soviet communism, right? That's key. But it is Marxism, or better, as Orrin McIntyre explains in his book, The Total State. You want to check out the interview I just did with him yesterday. It's actually technically known as modernist managerialism. All right, this is what all the different totalitarian systems, whether it's the secular globalism of the WEF, or whether it's fascism, or whether it's communism, whatever it is, it's all united by the modernist conception of managerialism. It's a rule by elites, a sort of neo-feudalized rule by an aristocracy that control and coordinates the whole of political and economic life. And the Cloward-Piven strategy sees chaos and social disruption as indispensable to realizing such a managerial vision. So that's the intentional side of things. But there is most certainly, and thankfully, at least it turns out to be a blessing to us, there is most certainly a full-blown incompetence element to this as well. Remember, the first victim of evil is the evildoer. That's a key theological insight. The first victim of evil is the evildoer. The first sign of destruction of evil is the soul of the one infested with evil. So we're not just seeing an intentional dimension to this chaos. We're seeing an incompetence dimension, a debilitating incompetence dimension. And it's actually, again, built into the cake of this Marxism. It's something called bio-Leninism. Okay, we've talked about this before, but bio-Leninism is the notion that inevitably Marxist coalitions will place at the top of the social hierarchy, the social pyramid, as society's leaders. They will end up putting into place in that leadership society's misfits, for lack of a better term. In other words, whereas traditional Leninism promoted adherents getting promoted through the ranks by virtue of their ideological fidelity to Marxism, bio-Leninism promotes more on the basis of one's identity and the resemblance one has to victim classes, hence bio. And so bio-Leninism inevitably ends up enthroning and enshrining as leaders those people whose lack of competence and skills render them most unlikely to assume leadership positions. And so bio-Leninism inevitably suffers from a competency crisis, precisely because competency has been replaced by victim identity as the primary screening procedure for promotions and positions of leadership. Does that not perfectly summarize Kamala Harris? I mean, and the whole Kamala Harris campaign, everyone associated with her, the whole of it. Does that not summarize the whole of CNN and MSNBC and late night television with those witless, talentless imbeciles like Colbert and Kimmel? They all represent a political class devoid of the competence to either manage or persuade, because competence is no longer a key what's the word I want to look for? Frame of reference for promotion. You get promoted now solely on the basis of your victim identity, or you get promoted solely on your basis on your affinity with that victim identity. But you don't get promoted because of competence. Competence is no longer a key frame of reference for promotion. So what we're witnessing right before our very eyes is the social world that bio-Leninism built simply imploding in on itself. The irony in all of this is that in intentionally stoking crisis after crisis to overwhelm the system, these woke leftist radicals missed the ultimate crisis that they themselves cause by virtue of their own Marxist system, which is a competency crisis. They are ultimately being brought down by their own self-inflicted competency crisis in the guise of bio-Leninism. However, unfortunately, that implosion is trying to take as much of the country and indeed as much of the world down with it. And that is where this scorched earth policy comes in. Wait until you see this. But first, gang, if you are just joining us, welcome. If you want to ask me your questions, because unfortunately YouTube has suspended our super chats, you'll find that out pretty quick. Just click on that link below, join any one of our levels of support, and you have access to our very own virtual platform. You can ask me all your questions. I'll be happy to answer them right here on this live stream. So just click on that link below or go to fight.turleytalks.com/join and join any level of support. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. You can ask me those questions from that platform. Also, you know, our country witnessed a moment we'll never forget. We saw a man get shot, stand up, fist in the air, and in defiance scream, "Fight." Well, sadly, too many of us have lost our fight, and that's exactly how the globalists want it. They want us weak. They want us out of shape. They want us full of estrogen and microplastics. So this is why we're so excited to partner with Chalk. Chalk offers a whole lineup of products formulated to increase your energy, your focus, detoxify your body, and based on clinical studies, boost your testosterone. In fact, the ingredients in the Chalk Male Vitality Stack, they've been clinically studied to boost free testosterone by 87% in just 21 days. Unlike with gimmicky vegetable pills or powder, you're going to feel the difference, and they have the clinical studies to back it up. And right now, you can get 25% off your Chalk subscription for life. You heard that right, for life. Just go to chalk.com, spelled CHOQ.com, and use the promo code Turley. That's 25% off any subscription for life and cancel anytime. Chalk is made in America with all American customer service team there standing ready to assist you. You're going to absolutely love them. It's time to make men's vitality great again. Get Chalk today. That's CHOQ.com, CHOQ.com, promo code Turley, or you can text or call him at 50-CHOQ-3000. That's 50-CHOQ-3000. Those are some of the most beautiful scenes imaginable from one of the most beautiful Christmas villages in all of Europe. Those are scenes from Wrocław, Poland, which is one of the most, it's just one of the innumerable European towns and cities that hosts the annual Christmas village. It's one of the glories of Christendom, a wonderful tradition that maintains and perpetuates the beauty of Christian civilization. Absolutely wonderful stuff. All right. The American Thinker has a very good piece out today on how Biden has chosen to go scorched earth on his way out. Scorched earth, of course, is one of those brutal strategies of war. It can be an offensive or defensive strategy, and it usually leaves a wasteland of destruction and starvation in its wake. The article actually helpfully references several historical examples, one of which was Emperor Alexander I when facing an advancing Napoleon army during the French invasion of Russia back in 1812. And so as the French advanced, Russian troops embarked on a campaign of taking whatever supplies they could carry and then setting fire to or destroying virtually anything that the enemy could use when he came in and occupied the territory. And so it's a strategy that seeks, again, to leave a wasteland for the coming conqueror. And that is precisely what Biden and the globalists appear to be doing, not just to our nation, but to the entire world, as they increasingly come to the conclusion that their world has indeed imploded. Their bio-Leninist world is collapsing. It is coming to an end. And of course, it should be noted that this scorched earth policy is the logical extension of the Cloward-Piven strategy. I mean, if your political strategy involves intentionally provoking social chaos and mayhem, intentionally burning your own nation down so as to replace it with a different system, and if that strategy doesn't work, if the other political side is poised to take power, what do you expect advocates of chaos and mayhem, what do you expect they're going to leave behind? More chaos and mayhem. It's insane. And again, legacy media, it's all fine and hunky and dory. They go to Pete Hegseth. Are you going to allow gays in the military? Do you support gays? Are you going to allow gays? What a bunch of, I mean, they're just clowns. They're utter and complete and total, well, they're frauds. They're not a news media. They're a propaganda wing for the establishment. Well, in terms of burning it all down, it all started with the inexplicable, indefensible escalation of the war in Russia. Did I just say inexplicable? The inexplicable, inconceivable escalation of the war with Russia. The lame duck shell of a president has, of course, authorized Ukrainian forces to use attack and missiles inside Russia. These are U.S.-made long-range missiles. They can travel upwards of nearly 200 miles. Ukraine has had them for months now, but thus far has not been permitted to use them by Washington. That ban, of course, has now been officially lifted, which means that this war is now escalated with the use of U.S.-made long-range missiles launching right into the very heart of Russia. We are closer to nuclear war than we have ever been. And that escalation comes just after President-elect Trump won a landslide victory campaigning on ending this war. So Biden is purposely leaving Trump with a bigger mess in Ukraine than before the election. And just when you thought that 1 and 2, why do you have Hunter Biden's pardon slide on there? Come on, bud. Let's get that going. Just when you thought one intentional crisis wasn't enough, the U.S. State Department and the CIA actually went through with their plans on overthrowing President Bashar al-Assad and bringing in, Iraq-like, Libya-like instability in the region. Now I know why you did that. Sorry, Micah, that's my fault. I sent you the wrong one. My fault. All on me, my friend. Now you've got, no, we'll get there. We'll get there. It comes later. You'll see. Now you got a whole new Islamic Republic to deal with. You got Israel and Turkey making incursions into Syria. You got the whole tense Kurd situation to deal with in northern Syria. It's insane. But as Professor Jeffrey Sachs has pointed out time and time again, this was all at the behest originally of Obama back in 2011. And then the Biden State Department and CIA regime change with the Assad presidency was non-negotiable. They were going to get rid of him, and they didn't care if they had to use ISIS or Al-Qaeda or now the HTS to do it. And he did it after the election when Trump said, we're not going to have anything to do more with Syria. We're going to leave Assad alone. And then, of course, you had the inexcusable pardoning of his own freaking son. Right. So, I mean, there you go. Yeah. Speaking of the Middle East, this is literally Biden's own Saddam Hussein tactic here. What were Saddam Hussein's nutty sons? Whatever their names were. Because as the American Thinker article points out, Biden's pardon was just totally unprecedented. I mean, we all know this. I mean, most pardons are for very specific crimes. And while Ford's pardon of Nixon was a similar blanket immunity, it was specifically tied to the dates he was president, in accordance with the Supreme Court's recent decision. But by contrast, Hunter Biden's pardon is far from specific. It applies to no official duties, and it couches the pardon in a time span that just so happens to coincide with the moment Hunter joined the board of Burisma, the corrupt Ukrainian energy company, back in 2014, despite having zero experience in or knowledge of the energy business. And then, as if you couldn't burn down the rule of law enough, you got Biden openly considering preemptively pardoning the people who use the justice system to persecute Donald Trump and his supporters, including Liz Cheney and Adam Schiff, and of course, the other names that are floating out there, Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, who deliberately disobeyed President Trump's orders in Trump's first term. And then, to make things even worse, Biden's Department of Justice, if you can believe it, just paid out $2 million to the corrupt FBI agents, Page and Strzok, for releasing their text messages about conspiring to keep Trump from winning in 2016. So Page and Strzok, or Strzok, however he pronounce his name, care less. They both got exposed as a bunch of corrupt partisans weaponizing the FBI against Trump during the 2016 campaign, and they ended up getting rich off of it. Intentionally so. The Department of Justice wrote them a $2 million check. So all of this is literally taking a blowtorch to the rule of law on Biden's way out. Here's another example of the Biden administration just going scorched earth. We talked about this yesterday. You may have seen this. The Biden administration is ordering truckloads of unused border wall materials to be hauled away from the Arizona border and taken up north to a government auction site where people can bid on an entire border wall segment for as low as $5. I kid you not. $5. This has been an ongoing operation. One Border Patrol agent estimates that up to half a mile worth of wall is being transported out of Arizona every single day. And they're literally willing to sell it to the lowest bidder. That's how pathetic and petty they are. And your tax dollars be damned, of course. Unfortunately for the failed Biden administration, it appears like it's not going to work. Here's Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of the great state of Texas on what they plan to do with these auctioned off pieces of border wall. Check it out.
Business, and President Trump means business. And I don't know if you heard the latest today, Laura, but Joe Biden is now hauling off the border wall that's been lying down for years, and he wants to auction it off starting at $5 a piece. Message to the White House right now. I will bid on all of that wall, and we will buy it in Texas, and we will give it to Donald Trump. So I'm going to find out first thing in the morning where are we going to take the bid. I've got $1 billion in my pocket to do it. I write the budget with Senator Joan Huffman. We have the money. We're going to have about $6 billion in our budget for border security.
Dan, don't drive up the cost. Don't drive up the cost. The first bid is only $5 a piece of the wall.
And I will go in and buy it all.
Yeah,
I'm not going to drive.
What does that tell you? Yeah, well, what does this tell you about the Biden people?
It tells you
they're essentially greenlighting. They want more people coming in. Yeah,
they're despicable in what they're doing to the American people.
They're despicable to what they're doing to the American people, to what they're doing to Syrians, to what they're doing to Ukrainians. I mean, they're absolutely disgusting. There's just no way around it. This is just taking a blowtorch to the world. And it all goes back to a deliberate, thankfully, and incompetently deliberate enactment of chaos in order to bring about cultural Marxism. And you know what? You know what else we can throw into this mix here? I think we could throw into this mix this completely bizarre fiasco of drones buzzing over New Jersey. We're going to get to the bottom of that as well. But first, gang, if you have not secured the deed to your home, you need to click on that link below right now and protect yourself and your loved ones. You know, I was shocked when I found out how easy it is to access the deed to my house, and not just access it, but actually change it. You know, the deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it. But the problem is that the deeds to all our homes are now online, and criminals are free to find your deed, forge your signature, refile as the new owner of your home, take out tons of loans using your home's equity, and then stick you with all the debt. But that's where our good friends over at Home Title Lock come in. They're absolutely amazing, gang. Home Title Lock gives you the peace of mind that your deed to your home is absolutely, completely protected 24/7. Click on that link below right now. Use promo code Turley Talks, and all you got to do is enter your address for your no obligation home title scan to see if you've already been a victim of deed theft. It's a $100 value, absolutely, totally free with my promo code Turley Talks. So don't wait for the worst to happen, only to regret you didn't do something about it when you could have. Do what I've done. Do what countless patriots have done. Click on that link below right now and secure your home today. This is one of the most beautiful Christmas markets in Europe. This is from Strasbourg in France. Absolutely gorgeous. I remember European Christmas markets go all the way back to the late Middle Ages. Oh, keep playing it. Don't we have more? It's just beautiful. Yeah, keep playing it. All right. They go all the way back to the late Middle Ages, the 1400s. They start in Germany. And this is why many people wonder how Germans do Christmas so well. Well, Christmas markets started in Germany. No one celebrates Christmas quite like Germany. My son was just in Munich, and he said you can't even get off the plane and get into the terminal before you're overwhelmed with Christmas displays during this time of year. It's just really one of the single most beautiful, wonderful expressions of civilization, particularly Christian civilization, one can find anywhere in the world. So God bless Europe. I love this time of year. Absolutely wonderful. I haven't decorated my office yet. I've got to do that. All right. From the glories of Christendom, unfortunately, to the absurdities of drones, U.S. officials are reportedly investigating the origins of these drones that have been widely spotted flying in the skies of New Jersey. There are, of course, several theories about the origin of the drones, including that they may be part of a surveillance drill or operation in the nearby Picatinny Arsenal military base, or that they could be connected to China or Iran. Now, officially, the Pentagon denies everything. Literally everything. The Pentagon is just denying, just carte blanche, everything. They're denying foreign involvement. They're denying that any of these drones are coming from China or Iran. They're denying that they're just a layperson's drones. They're denying any U.S. military involvement, but rest assured, they pose no harm. The military is on top of it, and based on their stellar analysis, these drones are harmless. I mean, look, I don't think you have to be a genius here, to be honest with you. The fact that they've not shot down these drones suggests that this is something involving the U.S. military. But of course, what makes it all so confusing is that the Biden administration has been asleep at the wheel, intentionally so, when it comes to border security. Certainly something that we've seen with the southern border. We've seen it with the Chinese weather balloon. So we don't trust Biden with border security, obviously. And frankly, people don't much trust our military anymore. They don't trust the state anymore. They see it all as just so incurably woke and incompetent. And frankly, the military's answers that have thus far been forthcoming are anything less than convincing. We have no idea what it is, but we know it's not a threat. You want to put those two things together for us? So all of this is leading to a kind of, well, frankly, I mean, a mass hysteria among much of the public. And again, that just fits in with this intentional incompetence, this intentional incompetence model that we've been seeing these last 4 years. So bottom line, where are we with this right now? I do think this is a covert U.S. military operation. I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what it involves. I doubt Biden has any idea of what it is. But the military is assuring him, and the establishment-approved media is all in it as well, that everything is hunky-dory and everything is fine. So hopefully the incoming administration will expose for the entire nation what's really going on here. Now, finally, to close the loop in all of this, the biggest irony in this whole scorched earth policy of intentional incompetence is that the major victim in all of it is the legacy media itself, the very media of joyless Reed. Here is CNN's Van Jones, not just recognizing, but lamenting what he sees as the end, the complete and total collapse of the mainstream media. Take a look.
The suburbs, and I'm telling you, we are way off. The entire political class is way off. First of all, digital is the new door knocking. You got to understand that. We were laughing our butts off at Donald Trump for suspending his door knocking campaign and letting Charlie Kirk and Elon do a bunch of stuff online. We said, these guys are idiots. These guys are stupid. Then you start knocking on these doors. You know what people come to the door with? Their phone in their hand. They're in a 24-hour digital surround sound that has nothing to do with CNN, has nothing to do with any stuff that we do. I asked my son, I got a teenage son, I asked him, who are the most influential people in the world today? I'm thinking to myself, he's going to say Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Jay-Z. He says, Kai Cent, Aiden Ross, Jinxie, and Sketch. I don't know who he's talking about. I said, what platforms are you on? He goes, I'm on Twitch, Kick, and Rumble. I said, that sounds like you need to go to the hospital. What are these platforms? I'm telling you guys, the mainstream has become fringe, and the fringe has become mainstream. There are platforms, there are people out there that are getting 14 million streams, and we're on cable news getting 1 or 2 million. And so there is a whole world out there. Kellyanne Conway, I hate to agree with her, but I do a lot of times. Donald Trump understood that and we didn't. And it's not just Democrats that don't. The entire political class is way off, way off, way off.
Now, did you hear what he just said there? Did you hear what he admitted? He admitted, and again, you'll never hear this on CNN. You'll never hear this on MSNBC. He admitted that the mainstream has become the fringe. And the supposed fringe, has become the mainstream. We are the news now. And of course, we on this channel have been saying that now for at least what? If you've been with us for several years, how long have we been saying that? 4 years at least. And make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button if you haven't already done so. You want to be on what did Rush used to say? We're going to be on the cutting edge of societal evolution, right? Welcome to the party, pal, as Bruce Willis would say. And yes, that wonderful Christmas movie, Die Hard. I do believe it's a Christmas movie. One of the best. I love it. Welcome to the party. We've been talking about this phenomenon known as the network society now for years. I've written about it. And Van Jones and CNN are just learning about it. Well, better late than never. What the dinosaurs in the legacy media are now just figuring out, as you can see, to their utter horror and shock, is that the legacy media belongs to an old era, an old dying social era known as mass society. So the era of mass society is an era of big cities. It tends to be, it's right around the Industrial Revolution, 19th, early 20th centuries. That's why all the legacy media, by the way, all the outlets associated with the big cities. Big cities rise up. They become mega cities in the 19th or 20th century, and because of the Industrial Revolution. And so the media, as we know it, is centered in those new social centers. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune, the Philadelphia Inquirer, LA Times, right? So that's why ABC, NBC, CBS are all headquartered in Manhattan. This is the era of mass society, the society of the Industrial Revolution that concentrated, collectivized power and population in our urban centers. And in that society, we were totally dependent on media organizations, particularly those of us who were in rural areas. We were totally dependent on media organizations for learning about what's going on in the world. That's why they're called the media. They mediate information that they had a privileged position in relation to. They had information that we didn't, and they mediated that information to us, whether it was through newspapers, radio, television, network, cable. We were largely dependent on corporate media outlets that basically had a de facto monopoly of information dissemination. We were dependent on their information mediation. Is that true anymore? Has that been true? This is what drives me crazy with these guys. It's like, this has been going on for a while now. Now, with the rise of the internet and what's called the network society, that dependence has been completely broken. It's been severed. We all now have instant access to information completely independent of the legacy media. Let me say that again, because I think that's so essential for us to understand, and in terms of the uniqueness of our time and the historical situation we find ourselves in, and one of the reasons why we're experiencing perhaps the single biggest societal civilizational paradigm shift in 300 years. Because of the network society, because of our shared hyperconnectivity, we now have instant access to digital information completely independent of the legacy media. That's how the mainstream has become fringe and how the fringe has become mainstream. In other words, information has escaped the confines of the corporate media outlets and now bypasses the legacy media in a manner comparable to the way text messaging and email bypass the post office. I mean, we saw this in real time back in the summer on J13 with the shooting of President Trump. The whole world, and I'm not even exaggerating, literally the whole world ignored the legacy media. Where did the whole world go to get second-by-second updates for what had happened in Butler, Pennsylvania after 6:11 p.m.? Where did the whole world go? They went to X. They went to X. The legacy media was caught completely flat-footed. While CNN was telling us that Trump fell, remember that? That Trump fell, or that Trump was removed from the stage because of loud popping sounds. Ooh, scary. While these legacy media outlets were caught literally frozen in time, making complete fools of themselves, we were getting second-by-second updates through the new media, the media of the network society, brought to us by citizens, by independent content creators. And what all of this means, and what's so fatal for the legacy media, is that we are now the news, and we are now in the position to fact check the self-anointed fact checkers. This is what so many in the legacy media simply don't understand. It hasn't hit them yet, or it's just starting to. We are all now, because of our instant access to the same information that anyone in the legacy media would have access to, we are now in a position to fact check the self-anointed fact checkers. And they are consistently getting caught with their out and out blatant lies. Trump fell down. Trump escorted off stage because of loud popping sounds. And that's why trust and confidence in the legacy media is an all-time low. The latest Gallup poll that just came out a few weeks back shows media confidence today, gang, it is the lowest it has ever been in our nation's history, as it ought to be. This is why social media influencers with $100 webcams are getting more views than CNN. Bottom line. It's what's known as techno-populism. Technology has separated us. It has severed us from our dependence on old, outdated, modernist, mass society institutions and bureaucracies. And now it has freed the people to rule and enable a society of faith, family, and freedom to flourish. It's because we have access now to the same information as CNN does, But now we get to analyze it in a way that far more resonates with the sense of reality that the vast majority of the population shares, rather than the utter woke nonsense spewed out 24/7 by the liberal elites on cable news. It's not hard. It's profound, but it's not hard. Once you recognize that we are in a societal paradigm shift, moving away from mass society towards the network society, as President-elect Trump certainly understands, and as Elon Musk certainly and Vivek certainly understand. Once you understand that, everything starts to make sense. And keep in mind, Van Jones is part of the same group of elites that laughed at Elon when he bought Twitter. 44 billion. I thought this guy was a smart, keen entrepreneur. I thought he was a great businessman. 44 billion. Guffaw, guffaw. They laughed at him. They mocked him. They ridiculed him. My friends, in the midst of an imploding world that will indeed be rebuilt better than ever in our new American golden age, my friends, who is laughing now? Over to you. Over to you. As our moderator assembles your questions, if you want to ask me your questions, remember, because YouTube has unfortunately suspended our super chats, we have been completely demonetized by Google. Just click on that link below, join any one of our levels of support, and you have instant access to our very own virtual platform. You can ask me all your questions. I'll be happy to answer them in real time on this live stream. Just go to fight.turleytalks.com/join. Also, you know, each one of us, all of us, have an opportunity to finally stop big tech and government overreach. Patriots are, as we speak, reclaiming our privacy. And you have no better way of protecting yourself than with SLNT. That's short for silent. Silent's Faraday products block all incoming and outgoing signals so no one can get their hands on your information. So we're talking from key FOBs to phones and laptops. Simply place your device inside and close the sleeve, and boom, you're off the grid and safeguarded from unauthorized access. Go silent today by clicking on that link below or going to slnt.com/Turley to save 15% plus free shipping on all qualifying orders. It's going to make for an amazing Christmas gift. Stay ahead of what's coming and secure your privacy today. Again, that's slnt.com/Turley for 15% off and free shipping on all qualified orders. slnd.com/Turley. All right, what questions we have? What do you guys? What's on your mind? I can only imagine. Got so many things going on. Terry, Dr. Steve, lots of commentators recognize the rise of some ancient, medieval, and even recent civilizations that have fallen over the years, but won't at least some of these civilizations inevitably have to fight a war with us because they're bent on world conquest? I'm thinking of like the Middle Kingdom of China and the new Ottoman Empire of Turkey, whose proxies just conquered Syria. So far, they're fighting the new Persian Empire, Iran. But how long before one of them attacks us? Great question, Terry. Yeah, this is Sam Huntington's thesis in The Clash of Civilizations. It's not that, well, I should back up. It's not that we're going to necessarily fight. It's that if there are conflicts, there are going to be conflicts over identity, and particularly ancient religious identity. And again, we could even see the Guillaume Fay's archaeofuturism here with Iran and their drone technology. It's not ancient tradition versus modern technology. It is ancient tradition and modern technology. That's the wave of the future, this archaeofuturist future here. So yes, the clashes are real, and our potential for clashes are real. We're seeing them play out in real time, particularly the HTS, which is an ancient Islamic civilizational sentiment behind it, animating it. We're seeing Ottoman tendencies among Turkey. We're seeing greater Israel tendencies in what many consider to be the newly theocratic Israel, or constitutionally theocratic Israel. I would push back a little bit on China. I don't think China I don't think China could be accused of world domination. They do have the concept of Tianxia, which is the mandate of heaven, but they tend to be where they see China as literally Beijing as the center of world order. But that doesn't mean they don't have. Certainly, well, you're going back, but certainly in the modern era, and again, we don't get rid of the modern era in archaeofuturism. It's just now being redefined in relation to religious sentiments. So it could, but I don't. Modern China is not as expansionist anywhere near as we've been. Let's just be blunt. Certainly since 1991, the fall of the Soviet Union, where we've been fighting a war somewhere around the world 2 out of every 3 years since 1991. But yes, I mean, just to boil it down, the golden era, the golden age, the new conservative age is rising. It means, the good news means that old, modern, secular, globalist, WEF, Davos insanity will end up getting, well, just like Van Jones said, it will end up going to the fringe. It will not have, it no longer has social, political, and economic, cultural plausibility anymore. It doesn't, the managerial, what do we want to call it? The managerial, circulation system, vascular system, isn't there anymore for it to poison. It's just gone. I mean, China stands in its way. Turkey stands in its way. Russia stands in its way. Modi's India stands in its way. The Middle East stands in its way. Southern Africa stands in its way. And increasingly the populist movements in both, like the United States and Canada. Pierre Poilievre hates the WEF. He even took a vow that in his administration, no one will be allowed in that has any ties with the WEF. So that will be gone, and we all go amen to that. But what is still there is the human, and humans never fail to disappoint, and there's still going to be conflict, but the conflicts now are going to be, as you pointed out, civilizationalist in nature. The good news is no one involved, particularly among, for example, BRICS, and that would include China. They are receptive to expanding within your own civilizational sphere, within your own culturally defined world, but not beyond it, because then you're going to bang up against another culturally defined sphere or world. So civilizationalism is not about taking over the world, but it is about taking over a world. So there's going to be conflict and there's going to be expansionism, but because culture is the nucleus of the new civilizational world, rather than system and protocol and management that by its nature expands, and is expansive over the entire globe, because it's not a civilization, it's a system that can be superimposed. It's a scientific, rational system that can be superimposed on all cultures. Because culture is the nucleus, it does have limitations to how far it's going to expand. And again, you have to go back. World domination systems tend to be modernist. Fascism, globalism, communism, they tend to be post-civilizationalist. Civilizationalism does have limits, generally speaking, based on the cultural infinity that the conquered peoples have with the nucleus culture. I mean, there are Soviet scholars that just talk about Soviet expansion just being absolutely economically and culturally disastrous for the experiment. You do not want to be taking over a people group that have nothing to do with your culture. It will be a nightmare all the way through. Again, we're seeing it with Israel and the Palestinian people. That'd be a perfect example. So, great question, Terry. Amazing question. And we will see, right? Degenerous. ROT Corp at it again. Dr. Turley's countdown into intro makes me think of the 1990s action movie trailer. In a world where wokeness has spread across the land, one man stands to maintain sanity in these insane times. He is the Turlinator. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. Dun-dun-dun. Dr. Turley, you are educated. I love it. I love it. Maybe we should do that. We're not monetized anymore, so we can't get hit with copyright, I don't think, anymore for music. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun. That's right, Sarah Connor. Rich Smith, Dr. Steve with the Trump election. Can American conservatives claim victory over the Marxist globalists, or will it take a few years for the Trump administration to put the final nail in the coffin? It's a good question, Rich. We'll have to see how long it takes. What is very clear is they recognize they are under the gun. They're in it. There's a time limit there. As a matter of fact, I heard him say this. So, Vivek and Elon have both said that Doge has a built-in terminus. They want to finish, what was it, on July the 4th, 2020? July the 4th, 2026 for the 250-year anniversary. They want that to be the gift for the country. So they see themselves as basically having an 18-month window. Trump has said, no, it's a 100-day window. I mean, he recognizes that the political capital that they need to spend to get all of these cuts and all of this extraordinary, refurbishing of the government, renovation of the government, revamping of the government, and the FBI and the DOJ and the military. I mean, literally everything, the deep state as a whole, the national security agencies, the border. In order to get all of that done, they will probably expend their political capital in 100 days. So what you have to do is you have to successfully accomplish it, or actually see the accomplishment happening, in order to maintain and extend that significant political capital past the 100 days. So he sees 100 days he sees his first 100 days as being the single most consequential first 100 days of any president in modern political history. I think he's right. I think he's going to do it. I think he's got the dream team of Avengers to pull it off. And expect establishment Republicans to be the enemy. Expect that. Expect establishment Republicans to be all over these dwindling fringe media outlets like CNN and MSNBC. Go, what he's doing? Tax breaks for billionaires. That's going to be from Republicans. Expect that. But I think the wind is at our backs. I think we're seeing such dramatic shift and change in our society with the rise of technopopulism, and with more and more of the population being emancipated from any dependence on the old institutional bureaucratic structures of mass society. I think we're going to be good. So I think I'm not trying to hedge my bet. I think it's a little bit of both in your question. I think you're going to see dramatic, decisive destruction of cultural Marxists in the first 100 days, but it's going to take another couple of years to work itself out. But I think wokeness was crushed. And the very fact that you see both corporations and Democrats running away from it, our education system, getting rid of the Department of Education, which he just reiterated the other day he's going to do. Linda McMahon, his new education secretary, she said, we're returning it all back to the states. We don't need an education department anymore. That is one of the most infested cultural Marxist department in the whole of Washington, D.C., and that's saying something. So errata, and the other one's NPR and public radio, and getting rid of all that. That's got to be like day one. Chop it, get rid of it. Shock and awe, as Tom Homan's talking about. But with the mass deportations, I think with the economy turning around, I think with the rise of crypto, with the Bitcoin reserves being bought up, and the mass Bitcoin wealth that's coming out. And remember, the Bitcoin wealthy are not satisfied with just making money. The Bitcoin wealthy want to remake society and civilization. So they're building cities. They're literally in the process of planning out and building cities and civilization. This is what the wealthy should be doing, not like Soros, trying to deliberately implode social order so as to remake society in a cultural Marxist image, but create beautiful and evocative culture. And I think that's just what's if the American people, the vast majority of the American people, are seeing that, I think they're going to turn all the whining and complaining of CNN off. They're just not going to listen to it because, again, just like with the campaign, the world that CNN was painting and presenting just did not comport with the vast majority of the country's daily experience. This is the greatest economy we've ever experienced. Project 2025. Just nobody bought it. So there you go. Richard, Dr. Steve, perhaps global warming is for real. Seems like the DC sewer. I love it. You guys are amazing. It seems like the DC sewer is slowly drying up under a Trumpian heat wave and future solar ray. Oh my, you guys. Woo! What are you drinking? You're sipping the eggnog early today. You are awesome. You're getting inspired. This is good stuff. Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Richard. It is what is it? Oh, what's his name? Glenn Reynolds. What did he call it yesterday? A preference cascade. Preference cascade. So when you have a preference falsification pushed on you 24/7 by a tyrannical system that tells you you have to confess something you don't believe, or else you're going to be fired and you're going to be canceled on social media and the like. When you have that kind of bleak, tyranny that is pushing this preference falsification upon you, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, everyone else believes the way I do. Everyone else thinks it's absurd and saying, I could still remember that. I could still remember more and more people at like family gatherings. So my family's kind of mixed. Actually, this will tell you, more and more are now totally pro-Trump. That was not the case in 2016. I was it. I was basically it. But now more and more of my family, my extended family, are all totally pro-Trump. They love it. And why? Because of what Glenn Reynolds called the cascade preference. We suddenly recognize that, yes, we all know what a woman is. Yes, we all know what a woman is. No, CRT does not belong in a classroom. Wokeness is a bunch of bullshit. This is nonsense. This is insane. And we all publicly start saying it, and boom, the whole thing. The Berlin Wall of wokeness just literally crumbles. It's like what we saw with the Soviet Union or in Eastern Europe. It collapses because the state is built on the foundation of legitimation. I was going to say legitimacy, and it came out legitimacy. It's built on the foundation of legitimation. If the vast majority of the country or the population does not trust and have confidence that the governmental structures are there for their benefit and for the good of society, if they start believing that governmental structures have been occupied by a bunch of bureaucrats, particularly unelected bureaucrats who are ruling for their own wealth and power, it will no longer have any confidence, and they will stand up and turn against it in some way, shape, or form. And you can only shoot so many of them before it just gets overwhelmed. And it's exactly what we saw in Romania, in particular with Ceausescu. He was the only one, if I recall, who openly fired. And then again, the delegitimation ends up extending even into the military, where they refuse to fire, and then they turn around, they start firing. And God forbid, we don't want anything like that, of course, but they start firing on the ones ordering the firing. So that's why it's just collapsing. Trump doesn't even have to go into office right now, and the whole thing has got Christopher Wray is left. He's gone. If this were 2016, he would have stood and fought. Make no mistake about that, because he would know he'd have the entire deep state apparatus behind him. He would have most of Republicans in Washington, D.C. behind him. Remember, Ted Cruz hated Trump in 2016. Ted Cruz refused to endorse him, standing on the platform of the Republican National Convention. And he refused to, I mean, it was insane. Vote liberty. Don't vote Trump, right? So those days are over. Those days are gone. Ted Cruz has kissed the ring as everyone else has. And it's because of you. It's because of you, because they know the Trump or bust vote is the single most powerful political movement we have ever seen in our nation. So you're awesome, Rich. Guy, question. Do you think the AfD of Germany will win the chancellorship? If not, is there any hope for Germany? Great question. Also, this is the alternative for Deutschland. For if people don't know, it's going to be hard to win the chancellorship of Germany right now because of West Germany. If East Germany had its way, yep, no problem. They're the number one party in East Germany. There's a very strong. I know a good German friend. Actually, I'm going to be interviewing next week. Konstantin von Hofmeister wrote Esoteric Trumpism. Great read. We'll be talking about his book there. But he's actually, in his Substack, he's made the argument. I think he lives in Frankfurt. But he's made the argument that East Germany should secede. It was a big mistake to have joined Western Germany because their cultures are just so different. East Germany being very, very traditionalist and populist and naturalist, and West Germany, unfortunately, not so. They're still globalist. They're incredibly liberal. They're still, I mean, I think they've turned their backs on the Green Party and Olaf Scholz and the like. But I have a feeling they'll just go back to Merkel's CDU and put in the next leader there. It's gonna AfD is just not as pop. They just don't have the strength. I think what are they? The third largest party in Western Europe. Maybe. I'm not sure. And Western Europe has the population. So is there hope? Yes, there's hope. Because I think the American Golden Age is going to have extraordinary ripple effects throughout, particularly Western Europe, where the last bastion of this managerialism, I think, will finally fall. Will it fall as a result of AfD coming to power? Maybe. I'm more inclined, just given the stagnation of German politics, I'm more inclined to think it's going to fall with the CDU adopting AfD platform. That's my intuition. I don't know that. But that is certainly, well, again, yeah, that's certainly what happened in Austria, neighboring Austria, with the Austrian Freedom Party, their Nationalist Populist Party, radically influenced the Austrian People's Party. And the Austrian People's Party ended up taking, at least in their recent campaigns, especially with what was it, Christian Strach, if I recall, the youngest chancellor in all of Europe. They basically were indistinguishable from their so-called far-right Nationalist Populist Party, the Austrian Freedom Party. So the influence, what we're seeing is that because the center-right establishment right is losing so much support to the new nationalism, the new populism, the new civilizationalism party, they end up adapting. They end up getting the key points of their platform as their own. They have all the infrastructure. They have the Brussels backing and so forth. And they're able to come to power. And then they, like the Tories, end up betraying it. They end up betraying all those promises. And so in Italy, in France, right, increasingly what we're seeing in Portugal and Spain with Chega and Vox, in the Netherlands, most recently, the Dutch Freedom Party and Geert Wilders, and even what we're seeing in Britain with the rise of reform, it's just skyrocketed over the last year. Increasingly, that betrayal is causing voters to say, enough with you. I'm going with the fringe, the bootleggers, the third party, right? Multiple party, but the main third party, as it were. And I'm going with them. And all of a sudden, then they become the mainstream. And that's exactly what we did see in Austria of late. So again, that could happen in Germany, where CDU talks like AfD, which they always do, by the way, in Eastern Germany and Bavaria. They always try to sound like AfD, but then they always, betray, just like a rhino. If the golden age is strong enough, maybe that will officially transform the parties, the mainstream parties, into more civilizationalist parties. Or I think voters are going to drop them. And they're going to go the way of like Italy and France, where the mainstream parties are dead. They're basically dead, the so-called mainstream, the center right, center left. And now it's the third parties that have taken over. Brothers of Italy, Lega, right, in Italy, National Rally, even Macron's Renaissance Party is technically a populist party. Right. But their main parties, the socialists and Republicans, are just disasters in France, or the Social Democrats and Forza Italia, which was their sort of main right party in Italy. They've just been marginalized. So I think there is hope, and the hope can come in the guise of the transformation of the mainstream party, center right party, or you know what, voters are just going to abandon it and they're going to go full AfD. But that's going to take some time. So we'll see. T-Man, Dr. Steve, do you think the establishment of the globalists would be defeated? Or do you think it's possible that Trump is an asset? Do you think that the establishment and the globalists will be defeated? No, Trump is not an asset. They wouldn't have killed him if he was an asset. If he was an asset, the very fact that you had Butler, Pennsylvania, I think says that he is no longer an asset. He has gone rogue. No, he's not an asset. No, it's crumbling from underneath, like, moving from a mass society to a network society. The neo-feudalist kind of woke globalist establishment is odious to someone like Trump and to Musk and Vivek and J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. No, this is real. This is as authentic as it gets, because it's happening all over the world. What scholars have noticed is that the modern age, the age that began in the 18th century in Enlightenment and grew and structured around the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century, and then the political revolutions of the 20th century, where all the old monarchies were replaced, and then you got your social democracies that later became liberal globalism, and then you got your fascism, you got your communism. Those structural ideological dynamics that comprised the 20th century have collapsed. They're all going the way of the dodo bird. They're all going the way of the Berlin Wall. They're all going the way of the Soviet Union. They've all collapsed. And in their place, populations are re-territorializing. Populations are taking the politics that were wrenched and disembedded away from them in the 20th century, in the beginning of the 21st century, and reallocating around a managerial class that had no accountability to local populations, so that local populations increasingly felt politically disenfranchised from their own future and having decisions over their own future. More and more populations, because of the breakup and the crack up of the managerial class based on its own intentional incompetence, as we talk about. The dynamics now are re-territorialization, where populations are bringing politics back to the local, and then by definition, the style or the flavor of the politics takes on the characteristics of identity, of nation, culture, custom, tradition, region, religion, race, and on and on and on. So that's what we're seeing in China. That's what we're seeing in Russia. That's what we're seeing in India. Those are big, massive civilizationalist outworkings. Turkey wants to go civilizationist, as does Egypt, as does Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the like. But we're also seeing it in micro versions in El Salvador, Argentina, what are called quantum politics. And I find them fascinating. We need to do more videos on them because they're small, like Monaco or Monte Carlo, right? And because they're tall and they're small, they can pivot very fast and very quick economically. And that's where crypto is playing such a huge part in those economies and beefing them up and boosting them up amazingly, making those countries extremely rich. So you're seeing sort of a reattack of the city-state, as it were, but city-states, I should say, because mega regions are taking over and against mega cities. So you're seeing super cities develop. We'll talk about this more. I'm just geeking out, but where you're seeing cities within a general vicinity of each other are starting to link up and forge their own mega region that's very dynamic economically and politically and so on. But the key is they're regional, and they're very regionally specific and re-territorialized. So the old managerial, tired, one-size-fits-all political and economic system modernity is just collapsing. So no, I don't see Trump as an asset. I think the whole thing is falling apart. There's nothing they can do to stop it. World War III, they can blow us all up. Old Polar, do you think COVID helped bring this to the forefront because we were all locked down? Check out Old Polar. Check out my interview with Orrin McIntyre. I think we aired it. We may have aired it earlier today, or we will, something like that. It was last night. It was on our live stream last night. He wrote the total state on how liberal democracies become tyrannies. And 2020 red-pilled him. He was always a conservative, but he suddenly recognized that there's not a lot. I mean, there's significant difference between us and the Soviet Union, but there's a lot of similarities. And the similarities he found in something called managerialism. And we just figured out how to create a more sustainable managerialism than the Soviet Union, because the surveillance state is very costly, and it expends tremendous resources in the economy. We're not, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of surveillance going on, but we're not a surveillance state at the level of China. But we are managerial, and there is a rule of a clerisy class. There is a rule of experts, and they're not generally, none of them are elected, and they tell us what to do irrespective of what we think. And the moment we stand up against them, we're called heretics, and we are excommunicated. So yes, I think in many ways 2024 was the revenge of 2020. It was a revenge against 2020. I think you're absolutely correct. And that will, ironically, go down in history as, again, another example of this bio-Leninism, where their own incompetence ended up being their own undoing, or maybe even their arrogance, their thought that they can redefine every aspect of social and economic life in accordance with their own elitist managerial whims, and that somehow would secure their power and their affluence. Ironically, it was its undoing. Ryan, Dr. Steve, I need your help. These free cities really don't sound all that great. Kind of like a prison, to be honest with you. No freedom to leave. I don't know where you're getting that from, which scares me. And also this cryptocurrency kind of sounds like electronic money, which didn't we just fight the Dems on that? No offense. I don't care how good it sounds. Do we really want either one? Where's the history, tradition, all of this? Am I overthinking it? No, Ryan. No, I love the way you're thinking. You're thinking. There's what's known as a very healthy hermeneutic of suspicion. And if any time there's anything new, we have to treat it like a car. We would the old used car salesman. Again, that's another interesting thing, where the rise of technology, the rise of internet has changed that dramatically, has it not? Because now we have all the information on the car before we even go up to show up, and in other words, you can't swindle a person as easily anymore. So let's go back to the free cities. There's nothing that says you can't leave. That I don't know where you put that in. If that were there, obviously nobody would want anything to do with it. But the freedom of motion is that's not in any way compromised. The new freedom cities are there. to revitalize urban life in a nation, or I would even say in a civilization, namely the West, where urban life has been decaying now for decades. So you take any city out there, and it really is experiencing sort of geriatric decay. It's falling apart. Talking about particularly in the West. It's the East now that's building up all of these exciting super cities. It's happening all over the world. But even Tokyo is going through a certain level of paralysis in the dynamism that tends to define cities. Cities are important because they are nodes of civilization. Okay, you might want to write that down because that's an important part of geopolitics and just the of civilization as a whole. They are nodes of civilization. They are dynamic transmitters of the basic structures of civilization, right? That's where we get the word civilization from. It's from civitas, is the Latin word for city, right? So they're going to give you the single best engineering structures. It's going to give you the plumbing structures, the electricity grids, whatever kind of energy systems you have. They're going to be concentrated and thought of in new and exciting and important ways there. And again, because otherwise they start falling under the entropic processes of degeneration. You're going to get the museums. You're going to get the arts. You're going to get the massive businesses, that conglomerates, and the money and everything like that. It's just going to be generating all of this dynamism to human society that you need if it is being done at the service of something great and beautiful and true and good. If it's just being done for horrible purposes, then it can be obviously used for horrible ends. But if, as long as you have this dynamism and it's being done for good ends, then you inevitably end up getting a flourishing society as a result. And it's not just you. When the cities then intersect horizontally, as it were, with each other, they start creating these mega regions that end up, even rural areas end up becoming the recipient. There's a reason why regions end up settlements, as it were, end up being established around the city, because the city does provide the physical and spiritual, because cities tend to be the place of the cathedral or a major spiritual center. They provide those resources for people, for food, health, shelter, and so on, protection in case of marauding. It provides that kind of security for people. That's what a city basically does. Now, our cities have been corrupted. They've been totally taken over by Democrats, and they're falling apart, no question. So what these freedom cities are wanting to do is to create new Dubais, as it were, make Dubai make it pale by comparison. It's the way Trump and Elon are thinking, Vivek. And that's the way the new wealth, the crypto wealth, is working itself out, as they want to build cities because they want to bring in a more crypto-friendly, techno-friendly civilization. Where the civilization is, where the traditionalism is, and so forth, is a couple of fold. First and foremost, the dynamics behind this are being pushed by techno-populism, and techno-populism involves the dynamic of separation. Technology is giving us now the freedom, particularly the technology of cyberspace, is giving us the freedom to be emancipated, liberated from a position of dependence on the old, secular, bureaucratic, depleting institutions of the modern world. So this is so technology is giving us and technology is a two-edged sword, no question. So you have to be careful with it, as is everything in life, by the way. As is politics, as is economics. But this technology is emancipating us from the old modernist structures, and thereby creating a whole new sense of independence, We are now nobody owns the internet. I know it's a weird thing, but nobody owns it. Nobody owns Bitcoin. Nobody owns crypto, right? By its nature, it is decentralized. And so that decentralization is creating a whole new, shall we say, from the word new, this whole renaissance of freedom and liberty, and even anarcho-capitalism, you name it. The traditionalism is found in the fact that the people who are being emancipated from the old modernist world no longer have a science, religion, technology, tradition binary anymore. That was specific to the modern age, that intentionally marginalized through the mechanism of secularization that empowered the state. That's the purpose of secularization, to empower the state as a single territorial monopolist over the public square. In the modern age, the separation of technology and tradition, the binary between state and religion, now that we've been emancipated, that no longer applies. And so Vivek is very, very faithful Hindu, and the Jordan Peterson generation is extremely reticent towards the notion of thinking mythologically and thinking in archetypes that are extremely religious. So what we're finding is just that technology, tradition, religion, state binary doesn't translate into a new social order emancipated from the old modern world that instituted and enforced that religion science binary. Another thing too is we're finding that there are, and this is getting widely acknowledged, that there are social, cultural, and civilizational problems that only have religious solutions, like repopulation. The single best indicator for fertility rates is religious sentiment. There's no better indicator. There's no better determiner. Wherever religion is flourishing today, demography is flourishing as well. It's comparably flourishing. Wherever religion is flourishing, repopulation totals are flourishing as well. Wherever religion is being suppressed, they're going through a demographic winter. Wherever religion has been privatized and pushed into the realm of consumption, next to pizza, churches next to Pizza Hut, right? Pizza Hut, dry cleaners, First Methodist. Wherever you have that, you're seeing your population, your fertility rates just implode. So, and if you do not have repopulation, you will not have a civilization. You will not exist. So the fundamental foundation for any civilization is religious. There's no way around it. So the very fact that they don't have that modernist imposed binary anymore, and the very fact that our best thinkers are recognizing that some of the single most pressing social, cultural, and civilizational problems only have theological solutions, means that no matter how technological we get, we will be radically traditionalists, lest our technology end up imploding, because there won't be any kind of replacement for your population. There won't be any population to enjoy it. So we are going to an archaeo-future whether we like it or not. It's built into the cake. So there you go. I don't think you have to worry about tradition versus technology. I think tradition is entailed in the technology, and the technology entailed in the tradition. Bert, good morning, Dr. Steve, and all of you fellow patriots. If you went out to the 12-mile limit, would I be free to shoot down any drones any way possible? Just a thought. Oh, I don't know. I have no idea on that 12-mile limit outside of Jersey. It's a good question. Or up in the air. I don't know which 12-mile limit you're talking about. That's cool, Bert. Rock Dog Dr. Steve, watching your videos and others this week about the coverage of the Daniel Penny case. Do you think he should sue them oblivion and finally kill them off? metaphorically, especially PM, SD, and CNN, and the feral hogs on the spew. Yeah, I do. I think so. I mean, he may just be exhausted from all of this, but it would be interesting if he had a donor, a very wealthy donor with very deep pockets funding that lawsuit. I would like to see him take on Alvin Bragg. I think Alvin Bragg is so corrupt, it's pathetic. I would like to see him take on, again, it's hard with CNN. It's hard with them. Again, this is part of what Trump is talking about, is getting rid of their license that they have with the FCC. It's very difficult to sue the media because they do have this protect. Again, the establishment is there to protect itself. That's what it's there for. That's why you become a part of the establishment, because you're in effect above the law as a result. And that way you can accumulate tremendous amount of power and wealth. So, yeah, but I think he should at least start with Alvin Bragg, and then he could take it from there. But I think any society that does not treat him as a hero is a very, very sick society, period. End of discussion. Richard, Dr. Steve, has Trump appointed Secretary of Education, or is that department soon to be doged? Yes, Linda McMahon, and she is the Secretary of Education, which I do understand they may remove or obviously make distinct from the Department of Education. They might try something different with that. Maybe she oversees a tiny administration that oversees funding to states, but she has said, Linda has said, absolutely, all education is going back to the states. There's no need for Department of Education. For all I know, she's going to work herself out of a job. It may just get doged from within, from internally. It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, it's Linda McMahon. She's the appointee of Secretary of Education. Rock Dog, Dr. Steve, when Trump invokes Schedule F, butter the popcorn, Rock Dog. When Trump invokes Schedule F, how quickly will these bureaucrats be removed? As you know from academia, government employees, especially appointed bureaucrats, are like ticks and so embedded they will fight to keep their redundant and worthless jobs. Absolutely. So it's a twofold move, as I understand. This is from Vivek and Elon's op-ed that was just published in the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks back. Done some videos on, I'm sure you've seen it. But it's a twofold move. First, they're going to eliminate the jobs. That's going to be the first thing. And they have two Supreme Court decisions to back that measure up. And that is West Virginia versus the EPA, which says that there's no regulatory agency can have any economic responsibility not expressly and explicitly given to them by Congress. And then the overturning of the Chevron deference doctrine that says that all courts across the country have to defer to the expertise of these bureaucrats in all matters of regulation. Those are gone. And so now the protections in terms of the government jobs themselves are gone. And that's how, well, I mean, they're talking about it. I mean, they're openly talking about wiping away 80% of those jobs, just like what Elon did with Twitter. And now, of course, X runs better than it ever has. So that's the first thing. Then once you get rid of the jobs, then you just get rid of all the bureaucrats for whom there are no jobs anymore. If you got rid of 80% of the jobs, you can get rid of 80% of the unhired permanent Washington bureaucrats. Now, the protection they have is they are protected from, ironically, political weaponization. And so they have tremendous amount of, they just have a lot of bureaucratic legal layers that are supposed to protect them from political retribution. But if you redefine their jobs as Schedule F, all those layers are gone. They end up reporting directly to the commander-in-chief, and he, at least theoretically, can fire them literally with a stroke of a pen. So we'll see how fast that twofold strategy works itself out. We will see. I have a feeling we have a Supreme Court right now, at least a majority, 5 or 6, that is not maybe. Now, I've heard Amy Coney Barrett may be a lot more sympathetic to the regime and to the establishment way it's structured. But I think we have a Supreme Court that is more than willing to sign off on a mass firing of dead weight that is accumulated. Oh, I mean, if you think dead weight accumulated at Twitter just over the last 10 years, imagine the dead weight that accumulated in freaking the swamp over the last 100 years. I mean, or certainly since the 1930s and FDR. So I'm with you. I think this is going to happen quickly. I think there's going to be a lot of weeping and gnashing in teeth and legal battles, but I don't think anybody in the country is going to be sympathetic with it. They're going to be like, time for you to go. And again, keep in mind, this is all working in conjunction with Kash Patel moving the FBI out of D.C., out of Langley, moving it maybe into Arkansas, some deep red place, and then chopping up some of its investigative bodies, farming out some of it to Homeland Security and the like, so as to reinvigorate the culture there and make it more of a MAGA culture. Because again, it's not just about getting rid of, but it's also about keeping those who are MAGA loyalists, so that we have a new culture in DC that will never bring back, hopefully, the swamp again. Paul, now that Romania's canceled their elections, where do you see their country headed? I don't know at this point. I'm concerned that there's just going to be more political stagnation induced by bullies in Brussels. Georgescu is he's going to be, of course, investigated. That's how Europe does it, and now increasingly how the United States does it. It's always funny that those members of the center-right and center-left never get investigated. Very interesting. It's always these fringe pro-Russian folk, right? So we'll have to see. I'm assuming right now, again, with the golden age coming and the ripple effects, it will be interesting. It will be interesting. Georgescu, to me, is a very Trump-like figure in many respects. Again, just coming from the outside, using social media. Nobody in the establishment takes him seriously. The media mocks him, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden he wins first round. What? That wasn't supposed to happen. And then they start polling, and they found that he was beating the establishment-approved centrist candidate, right, as they call him. And all centrist means is you're just a lapdog for the bullies in Brussels. Right now, I mean, they're going to have elections again, somewhere closer to the summer, and it's just status quo. They're going to keep the current president, as I understand it, in power, who's again a lapdog for the bullies in Brussels and for NATO. And we could just hope that maybe once Trump comes in, maybe he could pressure the bullies in Brussels, because he's certainly going to have a lot of leverage, particularly with NATO. He's already talking about withdrawing from it, the possibility of withdrawing from it. And I just hope, he can use some of that leverage to get that election up again, and take the attack dogs, push back the attack dogs on Georgescu, and allow him to be president. I think it'd be amazing president. As I recall, too, the presidency isn't that strong of an office. I have to look. I think their prime ministership is much stronger, but I may be wrong there. A lot of presidencies, like for example, in Italy, for example, the presidency is just it's much more of a ceremonial position to work out ultimately coalitions inside parliament when one party doesn't have a majority. But so we'll have to see. I would predict political paralysis for the time being. Polar, will Syria break up into small city-state? I don't know about that. That's interesting. I don't know about that. So I think part of the deal with HTS is you go conquer, you take Damascus, and then you allow Turkey and Israel. I mean, we're funding this. This is all us. Erdogan is certainly playing along as is Netanyahu, no question, to increase their power and prevalence in the region. But no, I do think it's going to stay largely territorial, but it is going to shrink. I think the Kurds are going to have their own. I think Turkey's going to be able to encroach a bit in the southwest or northwest, and then Israel's going to be able to encroach a bit going north from their end, and then HTS keeps the rest. And I just think that's just part of the plan, part of the deal. Now, whether they're going to be able to sustain that and keep that going, we'll have to see. It's obviously a very tenuous situation. Maximilian, what are political particularism and universalism, and which is the correct one? Good question. Good question. Let me brush up on that. Let me just get my computer turn off. If you are new, Maximilian always asks very profound questions. Let's see. I have a feeling the answer is yes. As it usually is, right? Because the two do tend to come together. Please, the ability of policymakers to further careers by catering to narrow interests. Oh, is it? So if the one I'm coming across is by politics to cultivate and support specific citizens or groups, as opposed to political universal. You know what? I'll have to give this one a little thought, Maximilian. I think you're stumping me. I thought it had to do with local politics versus more national or even international politics. But this is saying here, particularism refers to targeted efforts by politicians to cultivate the support of specific citizens or groups of citizens, aka clients. And I'm assuming the universal is going to be perhaps the nation as a whole. You know what? Maximilian, come back to me on that, because I could only give you a prima facie opinion on that. I would assume, again, generally with politics, both have their advantages and their disadvantages, and what you would try to find is what we call a paradigmatic syntagmatic relationship between the two, where maybe one is foundational and the other one is more what we technically call epiphenomenal or symbolic or an application of it. And so that you try to find a balance between the two. You definitely, politics is ultimately about rewarding your friends and punishing your enemies. It is that. There's no way around it. Again, I talked with Orrin McIntyre about this the other day. Globalism did its best to try to make us think they could depoliticize politics by saying, no. It's about rule of law and protocols, culturally transcendent protocols and systems that can be superimposed upon, all these divisive things like religion and race and region. All the while they are pushing out religion, race, region, right? That's the new politics. There's no way around it. There's always going to be, we're going to reward us and we're going to punish them, as it were. There's always going to be an us-them distinction. And so it sounds to me like particularism and universalism are two different ways of working that out. And obviously, you just want to find a balance. Again, this is prima facie. I'd have to look and read into it. But you want to find a balance between the two. It's not going to be an either or. It's going to have to be a both and in some way. You do want a universal politics in terms of you want a universal common ground where all geopolitical issues can be worked out. And increasingly, interestingly enough, like Sergei Lavrov, of the foreign minister of Russia, said, yeah, that's religion. So religious traditions, and particularly the wisdom traditions of each religion, because their appeals to virtue and wisdom actually tend to have a lot of crossover. So Taoism and Buddhism and Islam and Confucianism and Shintoism and Christianity, and Hinduism, have very significant crossovers when it comes to ancient conceptions of wisdom, tradition, hierarchy of goods, truth, goodness, and beauty, and those can be very powerful common points of compliance, as it were, so as to work for peace. So, anyway. Quark, on Monday, you'd mentioned we are seeing a worldwide return to theocracy. Do you see the adoption of Chrislam by way of the signed 7th World Religions Congress of the Human Fraternity document, the building of the Interfaith Abrahamic Family House in Abu Dhabi, along with us having technology in place to literally fulfill all the prophecies in the Bible? Are we going to witness the propagation of the one world religion mentioned in Revelation 17 now? Yeah, good question. I mean, it's a very good question. I tend to see the theocratic disposition more generally than that. I love the way you're working it out, because you're pushing the logical ends of it in terms of specifics. So I'm seeing it more generally in very similar kind of, going back to what we were just talking about, very similar to the fact that more and more populations, or I would argue the vast majority of populations on the earth, 85% at least, not our 15% secular West, that's soon by 2050 becoming 10% secular West, precisely because of our demographic winter. There are a number of foundational cultural, social, civilizational issues and problems that only have religious solutions. There's just no way. You take demography, you can only bribe people to have kids for so long. You can only do it for so long. Now, again, I'm all for having tax policies and so forth that are pro-family, no question. But that alone, tax policy alone, is not going to give you, demographic flourishing and repopulation surplus. It's just not going to do it. You're going to have to go into a very transcendent, sacred frames of reference of what are children, so forth, that are specific to religion. You're even seeing it in China. China had the one-child policy, demographic disaster. How are they resolving it ultimately? And yes, there's fertility clinics and so forth. How are they so the technology is there. How are they ultimately resolving it? By redeclaring themselves as a neo-Confucian civilization and Confucius-centered society on the family. So they're bringing the family front and center. That's what religion does. All religions do in some way, shape, or form. You always have a monastic outworking of it, but it's generally speaking, even Buddhism has this notion of the family that sanctifies the family, and that sanctification entails its own eternal reproduction. It becomes part of the biosphere of life. So that's where I see then inevitably theocracy as being the wave of the future. Because just simply put, a theocracy is a government whose legitimacy is rooted in some kind of ancient religious tradition. So if the foundation of society has to be religious, in that there are certain foundational cultural, social, and civilizational problems that only have theological resolutions, if that is the case, then inevitably the legitimacy of the state itself is going to be religiously founded and grounded. So now theocracies have all kinds of, they have a wide spectrum and all kinds of outworkings. They can be repressive and horrific and terrible, or they could be, like I mentioned, in many ways, Monaco. They can be, Monaco is technically being a Catholic monarchy. It is technically a theocracy. It's a constitutional theocracy. So that's that archaeofuturism working itself out, because constitutionalism is a modern form of government. But I don't think anybody watches a James Bond movie and thinks of, Monte Carlo as a place of, you know, mullah repression, right? So it has this very diverse outworking, but nonetheless, and just the world just seems, all the new societies that are forming now and governments, just like the last one we saw in the last week, are all drawing from theological, theocratic frames of reference for their social flourishing. In terms of all the other things you talk about, I'd have to give that. I'd have to give that. I'm not a big fan of the World Religions Congress or the Interfaith Abrahamic Family House. To be honest with you, I'm not. You know what? But again, these are just the logical outworkings of this. But I'm not necessarily a fan of it. Would it go in that direction? We'll have to see. Does our technology enable us to fulfill prophecy of the Bible? I think you're right. There are many theologians who have of old who have thought that, particularly the Russian cosmist school of Nikolai Fyodorov. Also Teilhard de Chardin, the French Catholic scientist. He saw technology. They all see, but they'll go the other direction from you. They'll see technology as redeemed in the resurrection of Christ, the transfigurative resurrection of Christ. And then the gift of the Holy Spirit literally reanimates the seven. I mean, they'll go all the way. It's very esoteric, you know, like the 7 miracles of Christ are just are collectively the re-Edenicing, as it were, the reinfusion of paradise back into the world through us. So it's not God doing it solely and then we're just passive recipients of it. God is doing it through us, reanimating human civilization and human civilizational endeavors in our technologies. And then that is helping to bring about, I mean, Fyodorov went all the way. Fyodorov believed that Christ is going to institute the resurrection of the dead through technology. He actually went there. If you don't know, look him up, Nikolai Fyodorov. I talk about him because there is an indirect connection between Elon Musk and Fyodorov. Indirect, one generation removal, but they have a common link, which is really just very interesting. I just find that very fascinating. Again, it's part of this archaeofuture kind of world where the world is becoming more like Star Wars, where it's becoming incredibly technological, but all the more mystical, all the more religious at the exact same time, where tradition, technology come together. So there you go. I'd have to think about those others. Whether again, given that technology is a two-edged sword, I'm sure the answer to your question is yes. It could move in that direction as well. Arat Korb, Dr. Turley, with Trump's new future cities, do you know how we can participate in his contest to build them or contribute to ideas? I do not offhand, but I am, as you can see, I think it's just one of the most significant developments for civilization and civilization development that's out there. And I'll be on the front lines, and you'll be the first to know, ROT. Fastalon, will President Trump being elected again and all that has happened in the world since help quicken the pace of globalism collapse in Europe? Will that in turn our fight in the USA? Will that in turn our fight? I don't know what you mean by that last part, but yes, I do. That's what it looks like it will happen, because when all is said and done, the basic infrastructure for globalism in Europe is the United States. This is part of the deal with the Marshall Plan. Post-World War II, will rebuild. The United States will rebuild Europe, but then, I mean, you're going to have to be subservient to us and our Bretton Woods system, and we'll help defend you. We'll make sure there's never a war that breaks out again. But you're going to have to be subservient to us. So the basic structure of the globalist world order is the United States. It is DC. Runs through Brussels, runs through Davos, and then it was supposed to create this cardiovascular system throughout the world, and the nodes being the cities, the world's big cities, going east via Tokyo, And it's supposed to just create this cardiovascular system, these connective tissues via the cities and the urban cosmopolitan centers to create a vast globalist empire. And it looks like it just collapsed. It died on November 5th. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Fastalon, for doing that. And Europe just doesn't have, it doesn't have the heart that's pumping the globalism through the cardiovascular system. The demons in Davos don't have it anymore. Brussels doesn't have it anymore. So I think just the logical outworking of that is it all falls apart. But we'll have to see how that plays out. We don't know. Fascinating. Is there a way to convert the existing decaying cities into freedom cities? Now, that's a very good question. Yes. Yes. If they want to survive, yes. There's probably the key mechanism for that is going to be these the development of these mega regions. They're already happening. It's already going on. It's pretty organic. So I don't think we have to do much, as it were. But so there are about 10 mega regions in our country. Some scholars have 11. Some will have more, though. So these are the regions that connect spatially proximate cities. So you think of like Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, DC, maybe something like that. Actually, I believe that is considered to be the northeastern mega region. They actually, through mutual transportation and shared corporations and government cooperation, they actually create an economy that revolves around those key cities that affects rural areas, suburban areas, all within those regions. That were one of those cities to say be removed from there, the entire area from Boston all the way down to Washington, D.C. would be affected. So again, they're like nodes and transmitters of what's called, it's technically referred to as dynamism. So it's political, economic, social, cultural, sports, entertainment. It's just basically civilizational dynamism that creates a churn. It's constantly reproducing and improving on itself. And what we've noticed in our cities is it's lost its dynamic churn. So Baltimore has gone from over a population of over 1 million in 1980 to now barely 500,000. It's just lost its churn. It's just literally imploding. Detroit has lost half its population since the 1950s. Just lost its dynamism. So what the freedom cities could do is, if they're placed in proximity or within one of these mega regions, what they can do is, in effect, zap that dynamic churn back again, because of all of this massive amount of dynamism that's being poured into it by virtue of its being built, like Dubai, for example, since 2000. I mean, Dubai is one of our newest cities. Now, we have to be careful. We don't want to go the way, obviously, of China and their ghost cities. You could have, but that tends to be from the centralized planning of Beijing. That tends to be a flaw intrinsic to their own system. So what you do is you take 10 cities, you put a city in every one of these mega regions, and then it becomes a transmitter to sort of zap the region back in to that dynamic churn. And then the other cities would, ideally, they would follow. You would have mass transit systems being built among the cities. Then you would have new corporations and companies, new political alliances, and so on. And then that hopefully reinvigorates the churn. So that's a way of being able to convert the dying, decaying, existing cities back into freedom cities. No healthy society does not have healthy cities. You've got to have healthy cities. Our cities are an embarrassment. Our cities and I'm generalizing here. You all know what I mean, right? I know there are some beautiful cities out there, you know, but cities are generally speaking embarrassments. I mean, they make Mogadishu look like a successful state. Our cities are largely failed states that have died under the custodial monopoly of the Democrat Party, hopefully the new MAGA movement and its vision of revitalizing civilization through the nodes of these freedom cities can make something, can revivify what were once absolutely wonderful cities. They were magnificent. Philadelphia is if you have not visited Philadelphia, Center City, Philadelphia, it'll blow you away. It's a beautiful city. Again, this is a time, particularly in the 19th century, it's an 18th, 19th century city, so it's got beautiful colonial cobblestone roads, colonial architecture that's remained. Thank you, historical societies who've kept those up. We want those. We want to keep those. But it has, I mean, just some of its churches will blow your mind because the Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, you know, industrial money was used to build culture. That's what they did. They built culture. What I despise about, you know, Bezos and freaking Gates and Zuckerberg, they do not, and my gosh, Soros, they do nothing with their vast amounts of money to actually create and build civilization. Nothing. All they do is they put all the money into political causes to push wokeness on us and to protect their own power and wealth. It's just discovery. Even Soros actually intentionally trying to bring about societal ruin so as to recreate society in a Marxist image. What we're seeing, it seems, with the new right, the new tech right and the crypto right is they are very, very much they're very like Peter Thiel and again Vivek. Elon's just talked about, I think he just sign a deed. What is look up Elon's latest city, his newest city that he's building around SpaceX. Forget what it's called. Something like Space City or something like that. But I think he just secured a deed, or he's just filed a corporate charter to have the city recognized as a viable city. They want to build civilization. They want to build the civilization of the future. That is traditionalist at its core. Again, that's the key. The archaeofuturism is the wave that we're riding, and I'm just very glad to see that the new wealthy, the wealthy of cyberspace and the cryptocosm are very, very interested in rebuilding civilization. So there you go. It would be primarily through mega regions. And with that is it, gang. Have a wonderful weekend. Keep prepping. I will try to decorate around here over the weekend. My son is coming back from college, and we've already talking about decorating the house with him. So we will have it all decorated. Remember, my wife and I are empty nesters now. So Advent has been a little lonely, I must say. But have a wonderful weekend in preparation for the celebration of our Savior's birth. And I will see you on Monday. God bless everyone. Take care.